Hello, and welcome to Cinematic History for Sleep, a place where real history is explored through calm storytelling, soft visuals, and a gentle rhythm designed to help you unwind or ease into rest. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for a small favor that truly helps this channel grow. If you enjoy peaceful historical documentaries and would like to support more content like this, please take a moment to like this video and consider subscribing. It means more than you might imagine. And I would love to know where in the world you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your comments help me feel connected to this global community of quiet learners. Tonight's journey takes us back more than 46 centuries into the heart of ancient Egypt's Old Kingdom, the age of the pyramids. Together, we'll explore how people truly lived during this remarkable era, their daily routines along the Nile, the structure of their society, the birth of early administration, the role of temples, and the organization behind Egypt's earliest monumental architecture. This is not myth nor fantasy. It is the real, documented history of a world shaped by the river, the sun, and the rhythm of order known as Ma'at. So, settle into a comfortable position. Let your breathing slow and allow the calm of ancient history to unfold around you. The Old Kingdom of ancient Egypt, often called the Age of the Pyramids, began more than 4,600 years ago. This period, spanning from around 2686 to 2181 BCE, marked one of the most stable and structured phases in Egyptian history. It was an era defined by centralized power, monumental architecture, and a sophisticated administrative system that shaped the daily lives of its people. The foundation of the Old Kingdom rested on a simple reality: the Nile River. Its predictable flood cycle created a rhythm that governed work, agriculture, religious ceremonies, and even political authority. Each year, the river rose and receded, leaving behind rich, fertile soil. This annual cycle provided the agricultural surplus that allowed Egypt to sustain large populations and complex state institutions. During this period, Egypt was ruled by a strong monarchy. The king, later known as the pharaoh, was not only a political leader but also a divine figure, believed to be the link between the gods and the human world. His role was to maintain Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order. As long as Ma'at was preserved, the land remained prosperous, social harmony endured, and the Nile continued its life-giving floods. The Old Kingdom was also a time of intense organization. Large numbers of officials, scribes, and administrators developed new systems for managing labor, distributing food, recording harvests, and directing long-term construction projects. This expanding bureaucracy allowed Egypt to coordinate the enormous workforce required to build structures unlike anything the world had ever seen. The pyramids of Giza, constructed during this era, were not isolated achievements. They were the product of a well-structured society, supported by farmers, craftsmen, engineers, priests, and state administrators. Each class contributed to the functioning of Egypt's early centralized state. As we explore daily life during the Old Kingdom, we step into a world defined by harmony between nature and human organization. A world where the rising sun, the cycle of the Nile, the rhythm of agriculture, and the will of the king were woven together into a single, unified pattern of existence. To understand life in Egypt during the Old Kingdom, we must first understand the Nile. More than a river, it was the foundation upon which the entire civilization rested. Its steady pulse, the annual flood, shaped the economy, the calendar, agriculture, and even spiritual beliefs. Each year, usually between June and September, the waters of the Nile rose as a result of distant rains in the Ethiopian highlands. As the floodwaters spread across the floodplain, they left behind a rich layer of silt, dark, fertile soil essential for growing wheat, barley, flax, and vegetables. This predictable cycle allowed Egypt to develop a level of agricultural stability unmatched by most ancient societies. But the Nile was far more than a source of food. It was also the kingdom's primary transportation route. Goods, raw materials, and people moved along the river in boats crafted from papyrus and wood. From quarry stones for royal tombs to everyday items used in village households, nearly everything traveled by water. This unified the country, creating a sense of cohesion between distant regions. The Egyptians divided their agricultural year into 3 seasons: Akhet, the flood season; Pere, the growing season; and Shemu, the harvest. These seasons governed every aspect of labor. During Akhet, when fields were underwater, farmers were often organized into state projects, including quarrying, construction, and transport work that supported major royal undertakings. This seasonal rhythm made large-scale building projects feasible, including the construction of the earliest pyramid complexes. The relationship between the Nile and society extended into religion as well. The flood was seen as a divine gift, an expression of cosmic order or mayat. A successful flood meant abundance and stability. A poor flood could mean hunger. Priests monitored water levels, recorded flood heights, and interpreted them as messages about the harmony between gods and people. In this way, the Nile functioned as the great equalizer. From the royal court to the smallest village, every person depended on its waters. It shaped daily routines, defined the agricultural landscape, and influenced political and spiritual life. The river was not simply part of Egypt's world. It was the axis around which the entire Old Kingdom revolved. Most of the population of Old Kingdom Egypt lived in small agricultural villages scattered along the Nile Valley. These communities formed the foundation of the entire economy, providing the food surplus that allowed the state, temples, and royal projects to thrive. Life for farmers followed a predictable rhythm shaped by the seasons. During Akhet, when the fields were flooded, families engaged in tasks that did not require farmland: repairing tools, weaving baskets, tending to livestock, and participating in state-organized labor. Many men were temporarily redirected to quarrying stone, transporting materials, or assisting in construction projects overseen by royal administrators. This was not forced labor in the modern sense. Rather, it was a structured duty tied to citizenship and seasonal availability. During Pere, as the land dried and planting season began, work intensified. Families sowed wheat and barley by hand, often accompanied by cattle that helped press seeds into the moist soil. Fields were divided through simple yet effective irrigation channels, managed collectively by local communities. The success of the growing season required coordination, timing, and cooperation among neighbors. Children played an active role in daily labor. They tended small animals, gathered reeds, carried water, and learned essential skills by observing their parents. Education in these villages was practical. Knowledge of tools, weather patterns, and agricultural techniques passed down through generations. Women played a central role in household economy. Beyond childcare, they were responsible for grinding grain, baking bread in clay ovens, brewing beer, spinning flax, and making linen, one of Egypt's most important commodities. They also prepared religious offerings for household shrines, reflecting the spiritual dimension woven into daily routines. Evenings were quiet and communal. After the heat of the day subsided, villagers shared meals of bread, onions, beans, and occasionally fish. Small oil lamps illuminated mud brick homes, casting warm, flickering light across simple interiors furnished with low stools, reed mats, and pottery storage jars. These households reveal a world that was modest but orderly, a world shaped by cooperation, kinship, and stability. Although farmers lived far from the royal court, their lives were deeply connected to the broader state. Their labor sustained large-scale projects, their harvests supported temple economies, and their seasonal rhythms synchronized with the administrative cycle of the kingdom. In this way, the daily life of farmers formed the heartbeat of Old Kingdom society, steady, dependable, and essential. To understand the Old Kingdom as a functioning civilization, we must look beyond its farmers and monuments. At the heart of its stability was a remarkable administrative system, one of the earliest structured bureaucracies in human history. This system relied on scribes, officials, and state managers who recorded, organized, and directed nearly every aspect of daily life. In a world where literacy was rare, scribes held a unique position. Trained from childhood, they learned to write the elegant and complex hieroglyphic script, as well as the faster cursive form known as hieratic. Their work was essential to the functioning of the state. Without scribes, Egypt could not have built pyramids, collected taxes, administered temples, or maintained social order. Scribes documented everything: grain harvests, livestock numbers, labor assignments, construction progress, river flood levels, and offerings to the gods. Every movement of resources, from a loaf of bread to a block of limestone, could be traced through their records. Because their knowledge was highly specialized, scribes formed an elite class. They lived more comfortably than most workers, enjoyed stable food supplies, and often held respected positions within temples or government centers. Many came from families of officials, continuing dynastic lines of educated administrators. The Old Kingdom was a highly centralized monarchy. At the top stood the king, believed to embody divine authority on earth. But beneath him existed a complex hierarchy of officials, each responsible for maintaining Mayat, the principle of harmony and order. These officials administered provinces known as nomes. Each nome had a governor, called a nomarch, who oversaw taxation, agricultural planning, law, and local religious affairs. Although their positions grew more autonomous in later periods, During the Old Kingdom, they remained closely tied to royal authority. Below the nomarchs were dozens of local overseers, foremen, and district managers. They coordinated labor forces, monitored land boundaries, assessed harvest yields, and reported their findings to higher officials. Their reports formed the foundation of Egypt's accounting system, a system that ensured fair distribution of food, accurate taxation, and efficient mobilization of workers. This network reached from the smallest village granary to the royal residence. Every field, every storehouse, every workshop was, in theory, part of an interconnected administrative structure. One of the most extraordinary achievements of the Old Kingdom was Egypt's ability to organize large labor forces. Contrary to popular imagination, the pyramids were not built by enslaved people, but by rotating teams of skilled and unskilled workers supplied by communities along the Nile. These workers required food, housing, tools, transportation, medical attention, and logistical planning. Administrative centers tracked how many workers arrived, how long they stayed, and what resources were needed to support them. Scribes recorded deliveries of bread, beer, meat, clothing, and building materials. Foremen kept detailed logs of daily tasks: stone cutting, hauling, shaping, and placing. This degree of organization was unprecedented. It allowed Egypt to complete projects that otherwise would have been impossible, not through force, but through efficient management and a cooperative seasonal labor system. Temples served not only spiritual roles, but also administrative ones. They owned land, supervised agricultural estates, employed laborers, and maintained detailed inventories of goods offered to the gods. Priests worked closely with scribes to track the flow of resources. Temple storehouses held grain, oil, linen, incense, and livestock, all recorded meticulously. These items supported ritual life but also played a part in redistribution networks that reinforced social stability. Temples thus formed a parallel administrative system that complemented the authority of the state. The Old Kingdom endured for centuries because it remembered itself. Through writing, it preserved laws, taxes, rituals, and architectural plans. Scribes created a continuous administrative memory, a thread connecting one generation to the next. Much of what we know today about Old Kingdom society comes from these records. Inscriptions on tomb walls, papyrus fragments, official decrees, and accounting lists carved into stone. A scribe's day involved long hours of calculation, documentation, and supervision. They worked in sheltered rooms, shaded porticos, or directly at construction sites where they tracked stone deliveries and workforce rotations. They used reed brushes dipped in black and red ink. Black ink was for main text. Red ink highlighted titles, corrections, or divine names. Their palettes, inks, and scrolls formed the essential toolkit of Egyptian administration. Though their work was quiet and methodical, its impact was enormous. The stability of the kingdom, from food distribution to monumental architecture, depended on their ability to record truthfully and maintain order. While the pyramids express the power of the Old Kingdom in stone, the administrative system expresses it in structure. Scribes, officials, and state planners formed the invisible architecture that made everything possible. Their work sustained life, preserved order, and shaped a civilization whose achievements continue to inspire awe thousands of years later. To understand the Old Kingdom, one must understand the central role played by religion, not as mythology, but as a structured worldview that touched every aspect of life. In ancient Egypt, religion was not separate from politics, agriculture, architecture, or social order. It was the framework through which people interpreted the world, organized the state, and maintained harmony between humans, nature, and the gods. At the core of Old Kingdom religion was Ma'at, the principle of balance, truth, and cosmic order. Ma'at governed the rising of the sun, the movement of the stars, the flooding of the Nile, and the stability of the kingdom. To maintain Ma'at was the highest duty of both the king and the priesthood. Ma'at was neither an abstract idea nor a simple moral code. It was a cosmological force, the condition that allowed the world to function properly. Every ritual, every offering, every administrative act was believed to help preserve Ma'at. If Ma'at was upheld, the land flourished. If it was neglected, chaos, Isfet, could emerge. This belief created an integrated worldview. Religion was not limited to temples. It shaped agriculture, law, architecture, social structure, and daily activities. In the Old Kingdom, the king stood at the intersection of the human and divine realms. He was considered the earthly embodiment of Horus and the son of Ra, the sun god. As the chief priest of every temple, he was responsible for ensuring that the gods received offerings, that rituals were performed correctly, and that the divine world remained in harmony with the human one. The construction of pyramids reflected this belief. These monumental tombs were not merely royal burials, they were part of a larger cosmic system. Their alignment with cardinal directions and celestial bodies symbolized the king's place in the eternal cycle of renewal. Even though the king rarely performed rituals himself, his authority legitimized every act conducted by the priesthood. The priesthood of the Old Kingdom was a highly organized institution. Different ranks existed: high priests, ritual priests, lector priests trained in sacred recitations, and administrative priests overseeing temple property. Priests did not serve continuously. Many rotated in and out of duty, often for 1 month at a time. This system ensured that temple knowledge was shared among elite families, while allowing priests to maintain secular careers in administration or land management. Priests participated in purification rites, daily offerings, recitations of sacred texts, astronomical observations, preparation of processional rituals, supervision of temple estates, funerary services, preservation of cult statues. Their work required strict discipline, bathing multiple times per day, shaving body hair for ritual purity, and wearing clean linen garments. Each morning, priests performed a sequence known as the daily cult ritual, one of the most important ceremonies in ancient Egypt. The ritual began before sunrise. A priest approached the sanctuary, breaking a clay seal placed on the doors the previous night. This act symbolized awakening the god. He then recited hymns, opened the shrine, and presented the cult statue, a carefully guarded representation believed to house the divine presence. The statue was washed, anointed with oils, perfumed with incense, and dressed in fine linen. Food offerings were presented: bread, vegetables, fruits, meat, and beer. After the ritual, the offerings were redistributed among the priests and temple workers, a practice that reinforced the temple's role in the economy. The daily ritual ensured that the gods remained satisfied, and in return, they sustained the cosmic and earthly balance. Temples were not only religious centers but major economic hubs. They owned large agricultural estates, herds of cattle, and fleets of boats. Scribes kept detailed inventories of goods stored in temple granaries. Offerings made to the gods were not consumed by them, of course. Instead, temples redistributed food, oil, linen, and other goods to workers, priests, and dependents. This created a system of social support that extended far beyond ritual practice. Temple workshops produced linen garments, jewelry, ritual vessels, incense mixtures, wooden furniture, stone statues. These industries supported thousands of people and provided Egypt with a stable economic backbone. The cosmology of the Old Kingdom shaped architecture and city planning. Temples aligned with celestial bodies, pyramids aligned with cardinal directions. Egyptians believed the world emerged from a primordial mound rising from dark waters. Temple floors elevated gradually to represent this mythic ascent. Ceilings painted with stars symbolized the night sky. Columns shaped like papyrus or lotus plants echoed the vegetation of the sacred marshes of creation. The kingdom itself was viewed as sacred geography. The Nile represented life, the desert represented eternity, and the horizons marked the journey of the sun god. In the Old Kingdom, funerary practice reflected profound religious beliefs about the afterlife. Elite tombs were constructed with an offering chamber, a false door for the spirit, wall scenes depicting idealized daily activities, storage rooms filled with food and tools. These scenes were not decorations, they were functional. Egyptians believed that images could magically provide the deceased with what they represented. Ka statues allowed the spirit to reside in a stable physical form. Texts and offerings ensured continuous sustenance in the next world. This integration of architecture, art, and ritual was uniquely Egyptian. Festival days offered a break from the structured rhythm of daily life. Some involved processions where statues of gods were carried outside their temples, allowing the divine presence to interact with the community. These events reinforced social unity, linked agriculture to cosmic cycles, and renewed the bond between people and gods. Music, incense, chanting, and communal meals accompanied these celebrations. Religion was not confined to temples. Families maintained small household shrines dedicated to gods or ancestors. Offerings of bread, beer, milk, or incense were made during significant life events, births, harvests, illnesses, and funerals. Amulets provided protection. Images of deities such as Hathor, Bes, or Taweret offered comfort and stability. In the Old Kingdom, religion was not a separate sphere of life. It was the framework underlying everything. It shaped political authority, guided agricultural cycles, structured economic networks, and provided explanations for natural and social order. Priests maintained the rituals that kept Ma'at in balance. Temples preserved the knowledge, wealth, and cosmic memory of the state. And the entire kingdom, from the humblest village to the royal court, lived within a worldview where the divine, the natural, and the human realms were inseparable. The Old Kingdom marks one of the most remarkable architectural periods in human history. During this time, Egypt developed the techniques, administrative structures, and ideological frameworks that made large-scale stone construction possible. These innovations culminated in the creation of the pyramids, monuments that have endured for more than 4,000 years. Stone architecture was not always a part of Egyptian building tradition. Before the Old Kingdom, structures were typically made of mud brick, wood, and woven materials suitable for everyday life. What changed was not only technology, but political ambition. Kings of the Third and Fourth dynasties sought to express their authority through permanence, through structures that would last for eternity. The shift begins with King Djoser, whose step pyramid at Saqqara represents the earliest large-scale stone complex in the world. His architect, Imhotep, introduced revolutionary concepts: cut stone blocks, layered construction, columned courtyards, and a unified ceremonial complex. This innovation created the foundation for all future pyramid architecture. With each generation, design grew more refined. Under Sneferu, the first true pyramids emerged, monuments that reflect both architectural experimentation and administrative sophistication. By the time of Khufu, Egypt possessed the experience, workforce organization, and ideological coherence to construct the Great Pyramid, the tallest structure built by humans until the medieval period. These monuments were not isolated achievements. They were the result of a highly coordinated system involving quarry workers, transport crews, architects, mathematicians, scribes, priests, and state officials. Every block of stone, and there were millions, represented the cooperation of an entire civilization. The story of pyramid construction begins in the quarries. Egypt's landscape offered a rich variety of building materials, each with its own purpose. Limestone formed the core of most pyramids. The finest white limestone came from quarries at Tura, across the river from Memphis. This stone produced the smooth, gleaming outer casing that once covered the Great Pyramids. Quarry workers used surprisingly simple tools: copper chisels and adzes, dolerite pounding stones, wooden mallets, and stone wedges. Despite their simplicity, these tools were effective when used systematically. To extract blocks, workers cut channels along natural fissures, inserted wooden wedges, and then soaked them with water. As the wood expanded, the pressure gently separated the stone from the bedrock. Teams then shaped the blocks using dolerite pounders, heavy, round stones ideal for rough shaping. Granite, used for interior chambers, sarcophagi, and architectural elements, came from Aswan. This stone was much harder than limestone, requiring immense labor. Workers created rows of shallow depressions using dolerite hammers, gradually detaching massive blocks weighing up to 60 tons. These quarries were state-supervised. Scribes recorded how many blocks were extracted, where they were sent, and which teams were responsible. Foremen oversaw safety, efficiency, and tool distribution. This level of organization reflects the administrative strength of the Old Kingdom. Quarry sites were temporary villages. Workers lived in makeshift shelters, cooked simple meals, and stored tools in dedicated pits. Their work was seasonal, aligning with periods when agricultural laborers were available. Once stone blocks were shaped, they had to be transported, sometimes from hundreds of kilometers away. For sites near the Nile Valley, transport began with moving the blocks on wooden sledges. Workers poured water or mud in front of the sledges to reduce friction, a technique confirmed by tomb paintings and recent experimental archaeology. Sledges reached river docks where the blocks were loaded onto barges. These barges, made of wood or bundled papyrus, were guided by crews familiar with the Nile's seasonal currents. Transport depended heavily on the river's rhythm. During the flood season, when water levels rose, barges could travel closer to the plateau. Temporary canals allowed blocks to be brought directly to construction sites. Despite the scale of the task, transport was remarkably efficient. By using the Nile as a natural highway, the Egyptians minimized overland hauling, a vital factor in the success of pyramid construction. Contrary to popular imagination, the pyramids were not built by enslaved people. Archaeological evidence shows that workers were well organized, fed, housed, and supported by medical staff. Excavations at Giza have revealed purpose-built worker villages, large galleries where teams slept, bakeries producing thousands of loaves per day, breweries, storage silos, and administrative buildings. The diet of workers was substantial: bread, beer, onions, fish, and occasional meat. Well-fed workers were essential for physical labor. Medical remains show evidence of treated fractures, suggesting that workers received care rather than being discarded. Labor was rotational. Farmers worked on the pyramids during the flood season, when their fields were underwater. This labor was a civic duty, a form of taxation through work, but also a source of prestige. Workers organized themselves into teams, often with humorous or symbolic names, a detail preserved in inscriptions left inside unfinished chambers. Despite their massive scale, the pyramids were built with extraordinary precision. This accuracy was not accidental. It resulted from careful planning, mathematical knowledge, and systematic surveying methods developed over generations. Egyptian architects began by establishing a perfectly level platform. Workers removed loose sand, packed the ground tightly, and created a grid using wooden stakes and ropes. Channels filled with water helped determine horizontal alignment. When the water line was even, the foundation was level. To orient the pyramids, builders relied on astronomical observations. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an error of only a few arc minutes. This precision could be achieved by tracking the circumpolar stars, those that circle the northern sky without setting. They used instruments such as the merket, a sighting tool, and the Beit Shen, a simple wooden frame used for aligning structures with the movement of stars. Mathematics guided every stage of planning. Egyptian architects understood ratios, slopes, and right angles, even though they did not express geometry as abstract theory. The consistent angle of the Great Pyramid's sides, about 51 degrees, reflects deliberate proportional choices rather than guesswork. Architects also designed ramps, passageways, and chambers based on predictable geometric relationships. The Grand Gallery inside the Great Pyramid, with its high corbelled ceiling, displays their mastery of balancing weight, pressure, and spatial proportion. What modern observers often view as mystical precision was, for the Egyptians, the result of disciplined planning and a deep understanding of practical geometry. How the Egyptians lifted millions of stone blocks remains one of the most studied engineering questions in archaeology. No single method explains every detail, and multiple techniques may have been used depending on the pyramid and construction phase. 1. The straight ramp theory. For decades, scholars believed a large straight ramp led to the pyramid's upper levels. This ramp would allow workers to haul blocks upward using sledges and ropes. However, a straight ramp long enough to reach the top of Khufu's pyramid would require almost as much material as the pyramid itself, making it impractical. 2. The zigzag ramp theory. Some propose a zigzagging ramp built along one face of the pyramid. This reduces material, but makes tight turns difficult for large stone blocks. 3. The spiral ramp theory. A more plausible model suggests a ramp that wrapped around the pyramid's exterior. This would allow steady upward movement and continuous building. Archaeological evidence of slight indentations on some pyramids supports this idea, though no remains of ramps have survived. 4. Internal ramp hypothesis. Another influential hypothesis argues for an internal spiral ramp built within the body of the pyramid. This hidden corridor would have allowed workers to pull blocks upward while maintaining the clean outer casing. Some structural anomalies inside the Great Pyramid may indicate such an internal system, but the evidence remains debated. 5. Lever and counterweight systems. Simple but effective lever systems could lift blocks onto higher courses. Workers used wooden beams to pivot stones upward, advancing course by course. This method requires less material and may have been used in combination with ramps. Conclusion: a combination of methods. The most likely scenario is that Egyptian builders used multiple construction methods: ramps at lower levels, levers for precise placement, and potentially internal pathways for upper stones. No single theory explains everything. The ingenuity of Egyptian engineering lies not in one perfect solution, but in adaptable, practical systems developed by generations of builders. A pyramid was never an isolated monument. It was part of a larger ceremonial complex designed to guide the king's transition from earthly ruler to eternal divine being. 1. The Valley Temple. Located near the Nile floodplain, the Valley Temple served as the arrival point for the king's body during funerary rituals. Here, priests performed purification ceremonies, washing and anointing the deceased. These temples were often constructed with massive limestone or granite blocks, polished to a reflective sheen. 2. The Causeway. From the Valley Temple, a long, covered causeway rose toward the pyramid. Its walls were decorated with reliefs showing royal festivals, agricultural scenes, and offerings, imagery that bridged earthly life and eternal ideals. During processions, priests, officials, and attendants carried ritual items up the causeway, moving symbolically toward the horizon. 3. The Mortuary Temple. Attached to the eastern side of the pyramid, the mortuary temple served as the center of ongoing rituals for the king's spirit. Priests maintained daily offerings of bread, beer, incense, and meat to sustain the king in the afterlife. These temples included open courtyards, offering halls, storerooms, and statues of the king. 4. The pyramid as cosmic symbol. The pyramid itself represented the sacred mound that emerged from the primordial waters at creation. Its four sides aligned with the cardinal directions. Its shape echoed the sun's rays descending from the sky. The structure was not merely a tomb, but a symbolic engine for rebirth, ensuring that the king ascended to join the gods. 5. Integration of architecture and belief. In this complex, architecture and ideology were inseparable. Every corridor, statue, relief, and chamber served a spiritual function. The pyramid complex was a carefully crafted landscape of transformation. If the exterior of a pyramid represents cosmic order, its interior reveals the technical brilliance of Old Kingdom architects. Deep inside these stone mountains lies a network of chambers, corridors, and structural features designed to balance immense pressures and protect the king's eternal body. 1. The subterranean chamber. The earliest concept. In many early pyramids, architects carved a chamber below ground level, symbolizing the primeval waters from which creation emerged. Though never used as the final burial chamber in the Great Pyramid, this feature reflects the evolving ideology of rebirth. 2. The Queen's Chamber. Located within the pyramid's core, the so-called Queen's Chamber was not designed for a queen. Most scholars believe it served a symbolic or ritual purpose, perhaps related to the king's transition into the afterlife or to celestial alignment. The chamber's corbelled walls distribute pressure evenly, demonstrating practical engineering knowledge. 3. The Grand Gallery, a masterpiece of precision. The Grand Gallery is one of the most remarkable architectural spaces of the ancient world. Stretching upward like an enormous stone passage, its steep, corbelled ceiling distributes weight outward, preventing collapse. Along its floor are slots that once held wooden beams, possibly for raising large blocks or supporting ceremonial equipment. Even today, the exact purpose of the Grand Gallery remains debated, but its engineering is universally admired. 4. The King's Chamber and the Role of Granite. The King's Chamber was built entirely of red granite transported from Aswan, nearly 900 kilometers to the south. The blocks used here are massive, some weighing over 60 tons. The chamber's flat ceiling posed a unique challenge. To prevent collapse, architects built 5 relieving chambers above it, each using granite beams arranged to deflect weight. This system demonstrates a profound understanding of load distribution long before formal engineering science existed. 5. Air shafts, celestial pathways. The narrow shafts extending from the king's and queen's chambers are often called air shafts, though they did not ventilate the pyramid. Instead, their alignments pointed toward significant celestial objects. One toward the circumpolar stars, symbolizing eternity. Another toward Orion, associated with Osiris and rebirth. These alignments reflect deep astronomical knowledge and spiritual symbolism. 6. Closing the pyramid, seals and security. Once the king's body was placed inside the chamber, workers closed the pyramid using plug blocks, sliding stones, and concealed passages. These mechanisms ensured that the burial chamber remained sealed for eternity, both physically and symbolically. The pyramids were not simply tombs, they were expressions of royal power, cosmic symbolism, state ideology, and collective identity. 1. The pyramid as a solar monument. The pyramid's shape resembled the rays of the sun descending from the heavens. This symbolism reflected the expanding influence of the sun god Ra during the Old Kingdom. By building pyramids, kings affirmed their connection to Ra, ensuring their rebirth in the afterlife. 2. Stone as a symbol of eternity. Egyptians viewed stone as the material of eternity. While everyday homes were made of mud brick, the king's eternal home was made of stone, emphasizing his divine nature. This contrast reinforced social hierarchy and religious belief. 3. Monumentality as political communication. Pyramids asserted royal authority in a landscape visible for miles. Their scale communicated stability, power, and unity, messages essential to maintaining order in a vast kingdom. Building a pyramid demonstrated the king's ability to mobilize resources, organize labor, and maintain cosmic harmony. 4. The pyramid complex as a spiritual machine. The entire complex functioned as a symbolic engine of transformation. Through rituals performed in the Valley Temple, Mortuary Temple, and Pyramid Chambers, the king's soul was believed to travel through the sky, join the gods, and ensure the continuation of Ma'at, the cosmic order. The Pyramid Age represents a turning point in human history. Never before had a society attempted, and succeeded, in building monuments of such scale, precision, and symbolic meaning. 1. Influence on later Egyptian architecture. The achievements of the Old Kingdom laid the foundation for later temple architecture, obelisks, colossal statues, and burial complexes. Techniques developed at Giza and Dashur remained in use for centuries. 2. A model of state organization. The administrative structures behind pyramid building influenced the evolution of Egyptian bureaucracy, taxation, and labor management. These systems shaped the kingdom's political identity for millennia. 3. Archaeological insights. Modern excavations continue to reveal new information. Worker villages, harbor systems, tools, diet, and written records. Far from being mysterious, the pyramids reflect a society with deep practical knowledge and a capacity for long-term planning. 4. Cultural legacy beyond Egypt. Throughout history, the pyramids have inspired architects, artists, travelers, and scholars. They stand as reminders of human ingenuity and the capacity of collective labor guided by shared belief. 5. The Pyramid Age as a window into human potential. The Old Kingdom demonstrates what a civilization can achieve when engineering, administration, and spiritual worldview align. The pyramids are more than monumental structures. They embody the aspirations, beliefs, and intellectual achievements of an entire world. As we reflect on the achievements of the Old Kingdom, the pyramids remind us that human creativity is timeless. Across stone, mathematics, astronomy, and ritual, the builders of Egypt forged a legacy that continues to inspire wonder. Their monuments, illuminated by the desert sun, stand as silent witnesses to a civilization that believed deeply in order, harmony, and eternity. Beyond the pyramids and monumental temples, the majority of people in Old Kingdom Egypt lived quiet lives in small villages stretching along the Nile Valley. These settlements were shaped not by grandeur, but by necessity, environment, and tradition. Villages were typically built close enough to the river to allow access to water, fertile land, and transport routes, yet far enough from the floodplain to avoid seasonal inundation. This careful placement reflected generations of environmental knowledge passed down over time. Houses were constructed primarily from mud brick, a practical material made from Nile silt, straw, and water. Mud brick provided insulation against heat during the day and retained warmth at night. Walls were thick, windows small, and interiors cool and dim. A typical home consisted of several interconnected rooms arranged around a central courtyard. The courtyard served as the heart of domestic life, a place for food preparation, storage, and social interaction. During warm evenings, families often slept on rooftops beneath the open sky. Furniture was minimal: low stools, reed mats, wooden chests, and pottery vessels for storing grain, water, and oil. Despite their simplicity, these homes were orderly and functional, reflecting a cultural emphasis on balance and routine. Village life followed a steady rhythm. At dawn, the sound of movement filled narrow paths between houses as people prepared for the day's work. Smoke rose gently from ovens as bread was baked, and the quiet murmur of daily activity spread across the settlement. In these villages, life was not defined by spectacle, but by continuity. Generation after generation lived within the same patterns, guided by the cycles of the Nile and the shared customs of their community. Food was the center of daily life in Old Kingdom Egypt, not as indulgence, but as sustenance carefully shaped by environment, labor, and tradition. Diet reflected the rhythm of agriculture, the availability of resources, and the social structure of the kingdom. The foundation of the Egyptian diet was bread. Multiple varieties existed, made from emmer wheat and barley, ground by hand using stone querns. Grinding grain was labor-intensive and often performed daily, usually by women of the household. The resulting flour was coarse, often containing small particles of stone, a detail confirmed by dentalware found in skeletal remains. Bread was baked in clay ovens or simple hearths. Dough was shaped into loaves of varying sizes and forms, sometimes flavored with dates, honey, or herbs. These loaves were not only food, but a unit of economic value, frequently used in wages and offerings. Beer was equally essential. It was thick, mildly fermented, and rich in nutrients. Consumed by adults and children alike, beer provided calories, hydration, and safety in a landscape where untreated water could be unreliable. Brewing was a domestic skill, passed down through generations. Vegetables supplemented the daily diet. Onions, leeks, garlic, lentils, chickpeas, cucumbers, and lettuce were common. These crops thrived in the fertile soil left behind by the Nile's annual flood. Fish, caught in the river and canals, offered an accessible source of protein. They were eaten fresh, dried, or salted. Meat from cattle, sheep, and goats was less common for ordinary households, typically reserved for festivals, communal events, or temple distributions. Meals were simple and communal. Families ate together, seated on the floor or low stools, sharing bread, vegetables, and beer from common vessels. Food was eaten by hand. Utensils were minimal. Despite the modest nature of daily meals, the diet of Old Kingdom Egyptians was relatively stable and nutritious. Regular access to grain and vegetables contributed to population resilience and supported the labor demands of the state. In this way, food was not merely sustenance. It was part of a carefully balanced system that linked agriculture, economy, household life, and religious practice. Clothing in Old Kingdom Egypt reflected climate, social role, and cultural ideals of order and cleanliness. Garments were designed not for display, but for practicality, comfort, and symbolic meaning. The primary textile was linen, produced from flax grown along the Nile. Flax cultivation, spinning, and weaving formed an important domestic and industrial activity. Producing fine linen required skill, patience, and time. Most clothing was light and breathable. Men typically wore short kilts secured with belts, while women wore fitted dresses supported by shoulder straps. Children often went unclothed in early years, reflecting the warm climate. Linen quality varied by social status. Officials and priests wore finely woven, bleached garments, while workers wore coarser cloth. Despite these differences, clothing styles remained relatively consistent across classes, reinforcing a visual sense of social order. Cleanliness was highly valued. People bathed regularly and shaved body hair for comfort and hygiene. Oils and perfumes made from plant extracts were applied to protect skin from dryness and sun. Adornment played a role in personal appearance. Jewelry made of faience, carnelian, turquoise, and gold was worn by both men and women. Amulets served protective and religious purposes, linking daily life to spiritual belief. Cosmetic use was widespread. Eye makeup, made from ground minerals such as galena and malachite, reduced glare from the sun and offered protection against infection. These practices combined aesthetics with health and ritual. In appearance, as in architecture and administration, Egyptians valued balance and restraint. Personal presentation reflected cultural ideals of harmony, an outward expression of the internal order known as mayat. Beyond agriculture, Old Kingdom society depended on a wide network of skilled craftsmen and artisans. Their work supported daily life, temple economies, and state projects, forming an essential layer of the kingdom's social structure. Craft production was often organized in small workshops attached to villages, temples, or administrative centers. Some artisans worked independently, while others were employed directly by the state or religious institutions. Stoneworkers shaped limestone and granite into blocks, statues, offering tables, and architectural elements. Their skills were refined through years of apprenticeship, passed from master to student. Tool marks preserved on statues and reliefs reveal a deep understanding of material properties. Potters produced vessels for cooking, storage, transport, and ritual use. Clay was abundant along the Nile, and pottery styles remained remarkably consistent during the Old Kingdom. Kilns were simple but effective, capable of producing large quantities of durable wares. Woodworkers crafted furniture, coffins, tools, boats, and architectural fittings. Although Egypt lacked large forests, imported woods such as cedar were carefully rationed for important projects. Local woods were used efficiently, reflecting an economy shaped by scarcity and planning. Metal workers, using primarily copper, produced chisels, blades, needles, and small decorative items. Although bronze was not yet common, copper tools were sufficient when frequently sharpened and maintained. Textile workers spun flax into thread and wove linen on vertical looms. Weaving was labor-intensive and often carried out by women, either within households or in larger workshops associated with temples. Artisans occupied a respected position within society. While not part of the elite, their skills were valued, and their work contributed directly to the stability and continuity of Egyptian life. In workshops across the Nile Valley, the steady rhythm of craft production complemented the seasonal rhythm of agriculture, together sustaining the material culture of the Old Kingdom. Exchange in Old Kingdom Egypt was based not on coinage, but on systems of barter, redistribution, and state-managed supply. Markets were informal yet vital spaces where villagers exchanged goods such as grain, vegetables, pottery, linen, tools, and fish. These gatherings took place at regular intervals, often near riverbanks or village centers. Value was measured through standardized units of weight and volume. Grain, particularly barley, served as a common reference point in transactions. Wages for labor were often paid in bread and beer rather than metal. Long-distance trade expanded the range of available materials. Through Nile routes and desert paths, Egypt acquired stone, copper, gold, incense, and exotic goods from neighboring regions. Boats carried goods north and south along the river, while donkey caravans crossed desert routes to reach quarries and mining areas. These networks connected local economies to state projects and temple estates. Trade was closely monitored by administrators. Scribes recorded deliveries, distributions, and inventories, ensuring that goods flowed efficiently through the system. Markets also functioned as social spaces. People exchanged news, arranged marriages, negotiated labor, and reinforced communal ties. The rhythm of trade was steady rather than frenetic, reflecting a culture oriented toward balance and predictability. In this economy, exchange was not driven by accumulation, but by circulation. Goods moved continuously between households, temples, and the state, reinforcing social cohesion and economic stability. Life in the Old Kingdom was not defined solely by labor. Within the steady rhythms of work, there were also moments of rest, music, and quiet enjoyment that strengthened social bonds and offered balance. Music played an important role in both private and communal life. Simple instruments such as harps, flutes, lyres, clappers, and drums accompanied festivals, household gatherings, and religious ceremonies. Musicians often performed in small groups. Songs marked significant moments, celebrations, rituals, and seasonal events. Music was not loud or overwhelming, but rhythmic and measured, echoing the broader Egyptian preference for harmony. Dance frequently accompanied music, particularly during festivals. Movements were structured and symbolic rather than spontaneous, reflecting ritual meaning as much as entertainment. Storytelling also played a role in leisure. Elders recounted myths, family histories, and moral lessons, passing knowledge orally from one generation to the next. Festivals punctuated the calendar. These events honored gods, marked agricultural cycles, and allowed communities to gather beyond daily routines. Offerings, music, shared meals, and processions transformed ordinary spaces into moments of collective meaning. In these quieter pleasures, Egyptians found continuity, moments of joy that balanced the demands of labor and reinforced communal identity. Family formed the foundation of Old Kingdom society. Households were structured around kinship, cooperation, and shared responsibility. Marriage was common and largely practical, though affection and partnership were valued. Husbands and wives shared economic and domestic roles, contributing together to household stability. Children were integrated early into daily life. From a young age, they observed adult tasks, gradually learning skills through imitation rather than formal instruction. Boys often learned agricultural work, crafts, or administration depending on family background. Girls were taught domestic skills, textile production, and household management. Formal education was limited and reserved mainly for those destined to become scribes. These children attended specialized schools where they practiced writing, calculation, and memorization. Discipline emphasized repetition and correction, reinforcing accuracy and obedience. Education was demanding, but it offered social mobility and security. Within families, respect for elders was central. Ancestral memory connected households to the past, reinforcing continuity and identity across generations. As the sun lowered toward the western horizon, village life gradually slowed. The intense heat of the day gave way to cooler air, and activity softened into evening routines. Families returned home from fields and workshops. Evening meals were prepared, shared quietly, and followed by conversation or rest. Oil lamps illuminated interiors with a soft, flickering glow. Shadows moved gently along mud brick walls, creating an atmosphere of calm and intimacy. Household shrines received small offerings, a piece of bread, a libation of beer, a whispered prayer. These acts connected daily life to the divine, even in moments of rest. On clear nights, rooftops became places of sleep. Families lay beneath the stars, surrounded by familiar constellations that marked time and season. The night sky held meaning. Stars were not distant abstractions, but part of a living cosmic order. Their steady movement reinforced beliefs in continuity and balance. In these quiet hours, life in the Old Kingdom reached its most peaceful state, a time of rest before the cycle began again at dawn. Beyond the pyramids and temples, the Old Kingdom was sustained by ordinary lives lived with care, rhythm, and balance. Through work and rest, family and community, ritual and routine, people shaped a society grounded in continuity. In these quiet moments, the baking of bread, the sound of music, the glow of lamps at night, we glimpse the true heart of ancient Egypt. As the sun set beyond the western horizon, ancient Egypt entered a different state of existence. Night was not simply the absence of daylight. It was a sacred interval, a time when the visible world softened and the cosmic order revealed itself through darkness, silence, and stars. For the people of the Old Kingdom, night marked a transition. Fields rested, work slowed, voices quieted, and the world shifted from human activity to cosmic movement. The western horizon held particular meaning. It was associated with endings, transformation, and renewal. As the sun disappeared, it was believed to begin a perilous journey through the Duat, the hidden realm beneath the earth, only to be reborn at dawn. This nightly journey of the sun was not myth alone. It shaped how Egyptians understood time, mortality, and continuity. Night was a necessary passage, not something to be feared, but something to be respected. Villages gradually settled into stillness. Oil lamps replaced sunlight, casting warm, trembling glows inside homes. Families gathered quietly, sharing food, conversation, or rest. Beyond the village, the desert cooled, and the sky expanded. The night sky was astonishingly clear. Without artificial light, stars appeared sharp and abundant. They did not flicker randomly, but moved with slow precision, patterns that repeated night after night, year after year. To the Egyptians, this consistency was reassuring. The stars demonstrated Mayat, cosmic order in motion. Certain stars never set. They circled endlessly around the northern sky, visible throughout the night and across the seasons. These circumpolar stars became symbols of eternity, lights that never died. In contrast, other stars rose and fell, mirroring the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. This duality, permanence and transformation, lay at the heart of Egyptian cosmology. Night was also a time of listening. With fewer distractions, people became more aware of subtle sounds, the wind moving through reeds, distant water, insects, and the quiet breathing of animals. In this calm, the boundary between the human world and the divine felt thinner. Temples remained active after sunset. Priests performed night rituals, recited hymns, and observed the sky. Astronomy was not separate from religion. It was a sacred science. By watching the stars, priests tracked time, predicted seasonal change, and reinforced the idea that the universe followed a knowable, harmonious structure. Night, then, was not emptiness. It was presence, a vast, ordered presence that reminded humanity of its place within a larger cosmic rhythm. And, as darkness deepened, Egypt did not fall into chaos. It rested, confident that the sun would return, that order would prevail, and that time itself moved in calm, eternal cycles. For the people of ancient Egypt, time was not measured by clocks, but by the sky. Long before mechanical instruments existed, the movement of stars provided a reliable, repeating framework through which night itself could be understood. During daylight, time was shaped by the sun, its rising, its height, and its descent toward the west. At night, however, the stars took over this role. They did not appear randomly. They followed precise paths, returning to familiar positions with remarkable consistency. This regularity allowed Egyptian priests and astronomers to divide the night into measured intervals. One of the most important systems they developed was based on groups of stars known today as decans. Decans were sets of stars that rose sequentially along the eastern horizon throughout the night. Each decan marked a specific portion of time. As one group appeared, another faded, creating a slow, celestial progression. There were 36 decans in total, each associated with a 10-day period within the year. Together, they formed a stellar calendar that linked night, season, and cosmic order. By observing which decan was visible at a given moment, priests could determine the hour of the night. This system required careful, repeated observation, not guesswork, but disciplined watching over generations. Time, in this sense, was not abstract. It was visible. Star clocks were often depicted inside coffins and tombs, painted on the interior surfaces of lids. These diagrams served both practical and symbolic purposes. They guided the deceased through the hours of the night, just as they had guided the living. The night itself was divided into 12 hours, a number reflecting cosmic completeness. These hours were not equal in length throughout the year. Instead, they expanded and contracted with the seasons, mirroring the changing length of nights. This flexible understanding of time differed from modern mechanical precision. Egyptian time was adaptive, organic, and deeply connected to the natural world. Priests responsible for timekeeping observed the sky from temple rooftops or open courtyards. They used simple instruments, sighting rods, plumb lines, and carefully aligned markers. Yet through these tools, they achieved extraordinary accuracy. Recording time was not merely technical. It had ritual significance. Each hour of the night was associated with specific deities, protections, and dangers. The journey of the sun through the underworld was believed to unfold across these 12 hours. As the stars moved, so too did the sun god, facing challenges, transformations, and eventual renewal. In this way, the measurement of time became a sacred narrative, one that connected human observation with divine process. Even ordinary people were aware of this celestial order. Farmers, travelers, and guards understood the general movement of stars, using them to orient themselves in darkness. The sky provided reassurance. No matter how quiet the land became, the stars continued their motion, confirming that the universe remained in balance. Night after night, the heavens repeated their patterns. Through this repetition, Egyptians found comfort, a sense that time itself was trustworthy, predictable, and guided by an enduring cosmic order. To the ancient Egyptians, stars were not distant points of light. They were living symbols, markers of divine presence, cosmic pathways, and eternal return. The night sky was read as a sacred text. Its patterns were observed, remembered, and interpreted with care. Over generations, Egyptians identified specific stars and star groups whose movements carried meaning far beyond navigation or timekeeping. One of the most important stellar concepts was that of the circumpolar stars, those that never set below the horizon. These stars circled endlessly around the northern sky, visible throughout the night and across all seasons. Because they never disappeared, the circumpolar stars became symbols of immortality. They were known as the imperishable ones, lights that did not die. To join these stars after death was considered a great honor. Royal funerary texts often describe the king ascending to the northern sky, becoming one with these eternal lights. In contrast, stars that rose and set represented cycles of death and rebirth. Their daily disappearance below the horizon mirrored the sun's journey through the underworld. One constellation held a particular importance: Orion. Although Egyptians did not conceptualize constellations exactly as modern astronomy does, the star group we identify as Orion was closely associated with Osiris, the god of death, regeneration, and continuity. Osiris was believed to die, transform, and rise again. The seasonal visibility of Orion echoed this mythic cycle, reinforcing the belief that death was not an end, but a passage. Near Orion appeared another crucial star, Sirius. Known to the Egyptians as Sopdet, Sirius rose heliacally just before dawn at a specific time each year. This event coincided closely with the annual flooding of the Nile, the source of agricultural renewal. As Sirius appeared in the morning sky, life returned to the land. Thus, the movement of a single star linked sky, river, agriculture, and survival. Astronomy, in this sense, was inseparable from daily life. Temples and pyramids reflected this sacred astronomy. Architectural alignments mirrored stellar paths, ensuring that ritual spaces remained connected to the heavens. The narrow shafts within the Great Pyramid are among the most striking examples. Some align toward regions of the sky associated with Orion and the circumpolar stars, pathways for the king's spirit. These alignments were not decorative. They were functional expressions of belief, guiding the soul toward its cosmic destination. Priests trained in astronomy observed the sky with patience. They recorded star positions, tracked seasonal changes, and maintained the knowledge needed to preserve ritual accuracy. This was not speculative astronomy. It was empirical, cumulative, and deeply respected. Through centuries of observation, Egyptians developed a coherent celestial worldview, one that connected human existence to vast cosmic cycles. In the silence of the night, as stars traced their eternal paths, the universe appeared ordered, intelligible, and alive. To watch the sky was to witness balance itself in motion. In ancient Egypt, architecture was never isolated from the sky. Temples and pyramids were designed not only as earthly structures, but as instruments aligned with the movements of the cosmos. Every sacred building existed within a larger celestial framework. Orientation mattered. Direction carried meaning. Stone was positioned with intention. The cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, formed the foundation of sacred planning. East symbolized birth and renewal, associated with the rising sun. West represented transition and completion, linked to the realm of the dead. North, with its unsetting stars, embodied permanence. South reflected origins and the life-giving flow of the Nile. Surveyors and priests worked together to establish these alignments. Using star sightings and simple instruments, they oriented foundations with remarkable accuracy. This process was ritualized, a sacred act rather than a purely technical one. The pyramids of the Old Kingdom reflect this cosmic precision. Their sides align closely with true north, south, east, and west. This orientation allowed the pyramid to function as a stable axis between earth and sky. The internal architecture echoed this connection. Corridors, chambers, and shafts were not placed randomly. They formed symbolic pathways, guiding the king's spirit through stages of transformation. The narrow shafts extending from the king's and queen's chambers are particularly revealing. Rather than serving ventilation, they appear to align with specific regions of the sky. One shaft points toward the circumpolar stars, the eternal lights that never set. Another aligns with the region associated with Orion. These alignments created direct symbolic routes from the burial chamber to the heavens. In temples, similar principles applied. Sanctuaries were often aligned so that sunlight entered the inner chamber at specific times of the year. This moment, when light reached the statue of the god, marked cosmic synchronization. Such events reinforced the idea that divine presence flowed between sky and earth through carefully designed spaces. The causeways linking valley temples to pyramids also reflected celestial symbolism. Their east-west orientation mirrored the daily journey of the sun. Processions along these paths reenacted cosmic movement through ritual motion. Architecture thus became a form of astronomy rendered in stone. Buildings recorded time, direction, and belief simultaneously. Even the materials chosen carried meaning. Limestone reflected sunlight, enhancing solar symbolism. Granite, durable and rare, embodied permanence and divine strength. This integration of structure and sky required long-term planning. Alignments had to remain accurate over decades of construction. The fact that they succeeded speaks to the sophistication of Egyptian observational science. To stand within these spaces at night, beneath a sky filled with stars, was to experience architecture as a mediator between worlds. Stone did not separate humans from the cosmos. It connected them. As darkness settled over the land, ancient Egypt did not fall into inactivity. Instead, night marked a different kind of order, one maintained through ritual, silence, and careful observance. Night rituals were quieter than those performed during the day. They were not designed for public display, but for continuity, to ensure that cosmic balance remained undisturbed while the world slept. In temples, Priests continued their duties after sunset. These men, trained in sacred knowledge, followed precise routines. They purified themselves with water, donned clean linen garments, and entered the temple spaces with deliberate calm. Silence was essential. Words were spoken softly, if at all. Incense burned slowly, releasing faint, steady scents into the air. The absence of noise was not emptiness. It was presence, a controlled stillness believed to be necessary for divine order. At night, priests recited hymns meant to protect the sun god during his journey through the underworld. These texts were not dramatic invocations. They were steady, rhythmic affirmations, spoken to guide, not to command. Certain rituals were performed entirely in darkness. Without visual distraction, attention shifted inward. In this state, priests believed they could sense the subtle movements of divine forces. Household religion also adapted to night. Families made small offerings at dusk, bread, beer, or incense, asking for protection during sleep. Night was associated with vulnerability. The sun was absent. Darkness concealed unknown forces. But rather than fear, Egyptians responded with structure. Amulets were placed near beds. Protective deities such as Bez and Taweret were invoked to guard households. Sleep itself was considered a liminal state. The soul, temporarily freed from the body, moved closer to the divine realm. Because of this belief, bedtime rituals were important. Prayers were whispered. Gestures repeated nightly reinforced safety and continuity. In the broader landscape, temples remained faint points of light. Oil lamps glowed within sanctuaries, symbolizing the continued presence of order amid darkness. These lights were not meant to banish night. They acknowledged it, offering balance rather than resistance. Even the desert, silent and vast, took on sacred meaning at night. Under starlight, its emptiness felt timeless, reinforcing the belief that chaos was held at bay through ritual observance. In sacred silence, ancient Egypt trusted that the universe continued its course. Night rituals did not interrupt darkness, they harmonized with it. For the people of ancient Egypt, sleep was not merely rest. It was a threshold, a quiet crossing between the waking world and deeper layers of existence. During sleep, the body became still, but the soul remained active. This state allowed communication between human consciousness and divine forces. Dreams were taken seriously. They were not dismissed as imagination, but understood as messages, signs that required interpretation. Egyptians believed that gods could speak through dreams. Warnings, guidance, reassurance, and prophecy might arrive quietly, wrapped in symbolic images. Some dreams were considered direct messages. Others required interpretation by priests trained in symbolic language. Dream manuals existed, listing images and their meanings, an early form of psychological mapping. To dream of water might indicate renewal. To dream of flight could suggest protection. Dark or chaotic imagery was not automatically negative. It signaled imbalance that could be corrected through ritual. Sleep itself was seen as a vulnerable condition. With consciousness loosened, the individual was closer to unseen forces. Protective measures were therefore essential. Amulets were placed near sleeping areas. Figures of protective deities such as Bes, small, fierce, and humorous, guarded against harmful influences. Taweret, the goddess of childbirth and protection, was also invoked at night. Her presence extended beyond motherhood, guarding households during periods of unconsciousness. Before sleep, simple rituals prepared the mind. Hands were washed, short prayers whispered, familiar words repeated, not in urgency but in trust. Sleep connected the living to the dead. Ancestors were believed to visit dreams, offering guidance or reassurance. In this sense, dreams formed a bridge between generations, reinforcing continuity beyond physical life. The rhythm of sleep followed natural patterns. Without artificial light, people slept soon after sunset and often woke briefly during the night before returning to rest. These waking intervals were quiet moments, time to listen, reflect, or simply observe the stars. Dreaming was not passive. It was participation in a larger cosmic flow. As the body rested, the soul wandered gently through realms shaped by memory, belief, and divine presence. In ancient Egypt, death was not understood as an ending. It was a transformation, a passage into a different mode of existence shaped by cosmic order and continuity. Life and death were woven into the same cycle. Just as the sun disappeared each evening and returned at dawn, the human soul was believed to journey beyond the visible world and return in renewed form. Death was closely associated with the night sky. As daylight faded, the stars emerged, constant, enduring, and reliable. These lights offered reassurance that existence extended beyond the limits of the body. For Egyptians, the soul was composed of multiple elements. The Ka represented life force. The Ba embodied personality and movement. The Ak was the transformed, luminous spirit that could join the divine realm. Funerary rituals were designed to guide this transformation. Preservation of the body ensured stability. Ritual texts provided instruction. Offerings sustained the spirit. The destination of the soul was not distant or abstract. It was the sky itself. The circumpolar stars, the imperishable ones, were believed to offer eternal dwelling. Because they never set, they symbolized permanence beyond decay. Royal funerary texts often describe the deceased king ascending to the northern sky, becoming one with these stars. This imagery linked political authority, cosmic order, and immortality. Orion also played a central role. Associated with Osiris, Orion represented death followed by renewal. As the constellation rose and fell, it mirrored the soul's journey through transformation. Sirius marked rebirth on a collective scale. Its annual appearance signaled the Nile flood, life returning to the land. Thus, cosmic events reinforced beliefs in renewal not just for individuals, but for society as a whole. Death rituals often occurred at night or near sunset. This timing symbolized alignment with the sun's journey into the underworld. Tombs were constructed as eternal homes. Their orientation, decoration, and texts formed a microcosm of the universe, a place where cosmic order could be maintained. Images carved on tomb walls were not decorative. They were functional, ensuring that food, labor, and protection continued indefinitely. Grave goods provided familiarity and comfort. The afterlife was envisioned not as an alien realm, but as a perfected continuation of earthly life. Night was therefore not feared. It was the time when transformation occurred. Under the stars, the boundary between life and death softened. The universe itself became a guide. steady, luminous, and eternal. For the ancient Egyptians, time was not a straight line moving forward without return. It was a cycle, repeating, renewing, and endlessly sustaining the order of the universe. Human life unfolded within this cycle. Birth followed death. Day followed night. Flood followed drought. Nothing was final, and nothing was isolated. This understanding shaped how Egyptians related to the cosmos. Time was not something to be conquered or controlled. It was something to be observed, respected, and aligned with. The movement of celestial bodies provided reassurance. Stars returned to familiar positions. Seasons followed predictable rhythms. The sun rose again after every night. This repetition was not monotonous. It was stabilizing. Rather than seeking progress through constant change, Egyptian culture valued continuity. Preserving order mattered more than innovation. In this worldview, eternity was not endless duration. It was perfect repetition. Temples and monuments were built to endure within this cosmic rhythm. Stone did not resist time. It participated in it. The pyramids were not meant to dominate the future. They were meant to harmonize with it. At night, under a sky filled with stars, time seemed to slow. Without clocks or artificial light, hours blended gently into one another. This softness allowed reflection. The individual mind quieted, while awareness expanded outward. In such moments, humans felt small, but not insignificant. They were part of something vast, ordered, and reliable. This sense of belonging within cosmic time offered comfort. Fear of chaos diminished. Fear of death softened. To exist was to take part in an eternal pattern. As dawn approached, the eastern horizon brightened once more. Light returned gradually without urgency. The sun's reappearance confirmed what the night had promised. Order had endured. Time had not broken. The universe had remained intact. As we step back from the ancient night sky, we are reminded that time once moved differently. Measured by stars, shaped by ritual, and grounded in repetition, it offered a sense of peace rarely found in the modern world. In the quiet rhythm of night and day, ancient Egypt found stability. And perhaps, in listening to these echoes of cosmic order, we too can rest more deeply. Thank you for sharing this calm journey through the night sky, time, and the enduring order of the cosmos. As our journey through the ancient world gently comes to an end, allow the images, the silence, and the slow rhythm of time to settle within you. The people of ancient Egypt believed that order was never loud. It was steady, reliable, present in the movement of the stars, the rise of the sun, and the quiet passing of night into day. Through their monuments, their rituals, and their careful observation of the sky, they sought not to control the universe, but to live in harmony with it. Tonight, you have walked through villages along the Nile, stood beneath pyramids aligned with the heavens, and watched the stars trace their ancient paths across the night sky. These stories were not meant to rush you. They were meant to slow you down. If you are listening as you drift toward sleep, may the calm order of the past offer you rest. And if you are awake, quietly studying or reflecting, may this journey remind you that time does not always need to hurry forward. Thank you for sharing this peaceful moment across time and distance. If you enjoyed this calm exploration of history, you are always welcome here. New journeys into the past await, quiet, unhurried, and guided by the soft rhythm of history itself. For now, rest well, and let the night carry you gently forward.